Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the AltDev Student Summit. We're pleased to present Ian Schreiber with our opening keynote, Thinking Three Moves Ahead. Note that you may submit questions via the posted Google moderator link at any time. We'll address these during the Q&A at the end. Also, feel free to join the discussion on Twitter using the AltDevConf hashtag. Without further interruption, I would love to turn it over to our speaker.
All right. Hi there. Okay, so let's see if I can get these slides screen shared. Okay. Okay, can you see that, Heather? Anyone?
Yes, looking good.
Okay, great. So everyone, welcome to the AltDev Student Summit. It's a huge honor to be here to kick things off and kind of set the tone for the rest of the conference. And it is humbling in the extreme to be at the head of so many talented people who are going to talk to you about what it's like in their careers and all the things that you'll be glad that you learn now instead of learning the hard way later. I mean, seriously, there are just so many talented game industry veterans that you're going to hear from over the next 2 days, and this is all free. So, I mean, if you're seeing this now, wherever you are, just the two people who organized this whole thing are Luke and Heather, who basically took the time out of their personal lives to just organize this whole thing. As far as I can tell, this is all volunteer. They get nothing out of this other than the warm feelings of knowing that they've enhanced your lives. So just, wherever you are, just give these people a hand. I know you can't, they can't hear you, but just do it anyway. Give them a shout out on Twitter. If you see them in person, just tell them how awesome they are. Just, it's great. So just thank them. So I'd like to start off by just having you imagine your dream job. Just picture it in your head. Picture having the kind of job where you wake up in the morning and you're like, you do this big fist pump, and you're like, yeah, I can't wait to get to work today. Because the kind of job where every now and then you just break down in a fit of giggles. You just can't help it because you realize that someone's actually paying you real money to do this, as if you wouldn't do it for free. As if you wouldn't pay them to do it. Not that you'd actually mention that to anyone, because hey, getting paid and being able to eat is great too. But still, just imagine being at that job where you just can't believe you're actually there. You can't imagine ever wanting to do anything else, right? And just picture that, because I bet for most of you, you've got a picture like that in your head already. So I just want you to picture that for a moment, because that's really your incentive for everything that's going to happen in the next 2 days, and really everything that's going to happen in the next 5 or 10 or 20 years. But at least that's the context where I want you to be thinking of during this weekend. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to get there from where you are now. So since this is the student summit, I assume that if you're listening to this, you're probably a student, probably most of you are in college, and so what are you doing now that's going to get you to this dream career, right? So now when I was putting together this presentation and running it by my wife, she was like, yeah, you see, the problem here is that keynotes are supposed to be all inspirational and stuff, and your talk actually has some useful stuff in it. So could you make it maybe a little more fun and a little less useful? And so basically I'm just hoping that most of you haven't been to enough conferences to know what a keynote is, so I can maybe get away with sneaking in something that's actually useful here. Because, if I have a reputation for anything when speaking with students, it's always me trying to tell students why the industry sucks and they should never choose this as a career. And I mean, Heather and Luke both know this about me, and they still asked me to keynote. So, the least I can do is just remind you that there are actually some really awesome things about the game industry. I mean, you get to make games, and you get to work with really awesome people on great projects. And, if you're lucky, you get to make games that millions of people play and love and enjoy. And you get to show up for work in jeans and a t-shirt because, suits and ties are for people with jobs that suck. And, you all probably know these things already. But, I mean, if the game industry is a good career fit for you, it's the best job you'll have ever. And this weekend is all about how to get there from where you are now. So let's talk about that a little. I mean, for me, I grew up playing games. I grew up playing all kinds of games. I mean, board games, card games, arcade games, console games. Games were just hugely meaningful and influential to me growing up. Most of the warm memories I have of my parents are playing games with them. And most of the warm memories I have of my childhood when my parents weren't there was playing games with my friends or playing games on my own while waiting to play games with my parents. And I didn't just play games, I also wanted to make them. I actually made some like board games and physical games. I wrote design documents in crayon. I built levels out of Legos. Um, but I really wanted to make video games, and I didn't and have any idea when I was 6 years old how to actually make them. And my parents said, well, if you want to make video games, you need to learn programming, and that was very true in 1980. But even after I learned BASIC and Logo and later on Pascal and then C and C++, I mean, nothing I learned really told me how to make video games other than like some simple text adventures. I mean, and all the way up through college, even my first job as a programmer after college, I always just kind of figured that video games were just, something I'd get around to learning one of these days. I really had no concept that there was a game industry with all these different roles, like, programmer and, animator and, game designer and game audio and they really need to find a better name for that. Anyway, I had no real plan for doing what I wanted to do other than figuring that someday I'd just magically figure it out. And and if I could go back in time to college and do this whole thing again, I mean, I could be where I am now 10 years faster. I mean, that's really the amount of time that I lost. That's a decade of my life that I can't get back. So I hope today that you can maybe understand some of what I'm saying and do things maybe a little more efficiently than I did, because mostly I am where I am because I got lucky, and I wouldn't want you to count on that. Um, and so, okay, games have been a huge influence in my life. And when I look back on my career, I can see a whole lot of parallels with games. And you could say in some ways that your career really is a game. And that's kind of how I want to frame this, is thinking about, this is a game. And, so obviously you're the main character in the story that is your life. And one of the key questions you need to figure out is, what kind of character class are you? So you're going to choose your character class and build your skills and build your tech tree and pick where you want to grow strong. And what are your main capabilities and what are your ancillary skills? And maybe as you develop, you decide you want to take a different path in multi-class, and that's fine too. It's up to you. And either way, you still learn a lot. You still explore the universe. You still help other people. And you still solve interesting problems. You learn more about yourself, and you learn more about what you care about. And there isn't really a defined win or lose state in life. It's kind of like an MMO or an RPG in that way. I mean, it's about choosing experiences that you want to have, and then making a build and choosing a server that gives you those experiences. So, the first step, of course, is to figure out, well, what does your elder game look like? What kinds of things do you want to do when you hit your level cap in your career? And in your career, that means, basically reaching the job that you want to do, so that your goal is no longer getting promoted. The goal is making awesome stuff, right? And so, I mean, some people want to be tanks, some want to be DPS, some want to be healers, some people want to do combinations of these things. Some people just want to solo. Some people want to coordinate a massive raid. Anyway, I mean, figure out what it is that you want to do first. And then the trick is to work backwards from there. So, most of you know already what it is that your end game looks like, but, how you get there from here is something that a lot of people don't really think about. And so this is one way that I would say is thinking of doing that, is to start with where you want to go, where your goal is, and then work backwards. So what kinds of skills do you need? What kind of experience do you need to get promoted to that job? So like, say, for example, you want to be a lead game designer on a major AAA game. If that's your goal, then before you do that, you probably need to prove just that you can lead a team on a smaller project first. And before someone's going to trust you with tens of millions of dollars to make like the next World of Warcraft or whatever, you need to show that you actually know how to lead a team. But before someone's going to trust you even to lead a small team, you probably just have to show that you understand game design at some level. So you probably just want some experience working on a team with other game designers and working as a game designer under someone else doing the lead, and just observing what is the lead designer doing, and getting some experience there. But before someone gives you that chance to even design games, you probably just need to demonstrate that you know what you're doing as a game designer at all. And so maybe some of that is studying core principles of the field in school, but most of it is just that you've designed some of your own games. So maybe this is one path to get there, if that were your goal. But the thing is, there are a lot of actual possible shortcuts you could take. There's not just this one path. Like maybe you and some of your friends work hard at part-time jobs in school, and you save up money for living expenses, and when you graduate you start your own indie studio, and then you live off ramen and microwave burritos for a few months while you work together to put out a few Flash games or App Store apps or whatever, and you get experience that way instead. I don't know if Jason actually did that. I just found a picture of someone who looked indie enough. Anyway, or another option is maybe as a student you go to a game jam over a weekend, and just purely by accident you put together something that just happens to be, you just happen to make a game that you look at this and you go, wow, that's actually really special. And then you work with your team and polish that up, and you sell that, and kind of become an indie by accident that way. So that's another possible path you could do. Or maybe you work on a project at school that just ends up winning some major award, like an IGF award or an IndieCade award or something, and all of a sudden your team and your game have a lot of exposure to it, and maybe and maybe your entire team gets a job offer to make the commercial version of the game, and you basically teleport immediately on graduation to the job you want. I mean, that's very rare, but it does happen. I mean, it happened with the team that eventually made Portal. Or maybe you just start out in a whole other field, like programming first, and then you work with designers as a programmer, and then eventually you transition into game design. This is actually the path that I took. I started out in computer science. I actually became a programmer outside of the game industry first, and then I found a way into the game industry as a game programmer, and then I worked alongside a game designer, learned a bit of game design that way, and then eventually became a junior game designer. So, and then kind of worked up the tree from game designer from there. So there are a lot of ways to get there, is my point. So this isn't just a linear path, and you have a lot of options. And the thing is, as you're filling out your tech tree, there are also a lot of new options that open up to you. So maybe you get part way to your goal, and as you go along in your career, you notice maybe there's something else you'd like to do. So maybe you get some experience and you realize that what you originally wanted isn't really as great as you thought. Maybe you say, well, being a lead designer sounds really cool on paper, but it's actually a lot of work and a lot of responsibility, and all of a sudden, I've got millions of dollars riding on my shoulders, and my ability to make a game and my ability to lead a team, and maybe I just don't want that kind of pressure. And so or maybe you just open up this whole new side quest in your life that just opened a whole other tech tree, and now you're thinking of switching your class. So maybe you're working in the mainstream industry, and you go to GDC and you look at experimental gameplay sessions, and you see all these awesome indie games coming out, and you're like, maybe I just want to be an indie. Maybe I just want to join an independent team and just crank out a bunch of small projects and just do a bunch of really cool, small-scale experimental stuff. Or maybe maybe you have worked with enough teams and enough people that you realize, hey, I could actually go freelance, and I don't have to tie myself to a single team or a single company anymore. I can just go out there and become a freelancer and hire myself out to a variety of teams and choose which projects I take and which ones that I don't. So that may be a path that opens to you after working on a few projects. Maybe you decide that you like mentoring. This is also what I did. Is when I was being a game designer, I also did a lot of outreach to local schools and found, wow, I really like mentoring college students. And so maybe when there's a demand, and then there's suddenly a demand for college professors with industry experience, and so maybe you go the college professor route, and that has its own tech tree that usually involves, like, getting a graduate degree, and and maybe publishing papers and doing other, and all kinds of other things like that. So um, so there's a whole other world out there that you might not even realize if you're just in industry. Maybe you exit games completely and do something else, like science or public service or corporate finance or something. So I mean, part of your build strategy as you build your own character is just now and then looking at where you are, looking at your current tech tree, and what your options are, and where you want to go from here, and what new skills you want to be working on. Because there's just so many potential options, right? So one question you might be wondering is, okay, well, how do you know what skills you need? I mean, say I want to be a lead game designer or just a game designer. How do I know what kind of skills are necessary to get that job and to do it well? And the good news is the information is out there. I mean, you research it basically. So you can use Google or some other search engine, and just type this in, and see what you can find about that. You can ask people at meetups or conferences. Look in your local area to see if there are any local game developers, and if there are, maybe they get together every now and then over coffee or beer or whatever, and just either just get together and network and talk with each other, or maybe even have some little presentations, like a mini conference or something. Maybe they've even put together like some actual formal events. Uh, so just try these things. Like look out there, see are there any local meetups, and go out there and meet game developers, and find people that do what you want to do, and ask them about it. You could go to conferences. You go to GDC. You go to some smaller local regional conferences. There are tons and tons of conferences out there, and some of them are expensive and some of them are not. And just look out there for what kinds of conferences there are. And then go there and, again, meet the people that are doing the kinds of jobs you want, and ask them. You can listen to the sessions here at AltDev Student Summit. There's there's this whole track called Day in the Life sessions. So you want to learn about, if one of those people is talking about the type of career that you want for yourself, that's a great place to learn about what's actually going on there, and what kinds of skills they use and what kinds of things they do, and figure it out that way. And if you're working on a development team, observe the people around you. Look at what are these people doing? The people who are doing what I want to do. What is it that they're doing, and and how are they doing it? And granted, I mean, if you're on a development team, you've got a job to do too, and so you can't just spend all your time not doing your work, and going over to this other person's desk and wasting their time also. But you can at least keep an eye out. You can maybe try and volunteer for some work that needs to get done that involves you working closely with that person. Like when I was a programmer, I worked very closely with a game designer. How did I do that? Because I managed to get myself into, there were lots of programming tasks that needed to be done, and I did the ones that involved working with a game designer. I did the gameplay programming. And so that meant that I was talking with the game designer a lot about, okay, these are the new mechanics that need to get implemented into the game. And every now and then I could ask, oh, what about this? What about this? Why this one? I could propose alternatives. Maybe, oh, that's going to be really hard to code, but I could give you this other thing instead. Sometimes I could even try coming up with my own ideas. Hey, I just noticed that it would be really easy to do this and this and this in the game. We're not doing it yet, but the code is already there. And and the game designer would be like, oh, really? Really? Like, we can do that? That's awesome. So yeah. So yeah, go ahead and 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 just pay attention to the other people on your team. And of course, make games. And because as you struggle with making a game, you will realize what kinds of skills you're missing. and I would say, keep it to small games because, as a student, you do have limited time and you don't have the amount of time or resources or manpower to make something like on the scale of World of Warcraft or even Minecraft. Start with very, very small projects. But then as you are sitting down and struggling with these projects and maybe even failing at them, that's okay. But you realize what kind of skills you're missing. And the other question you might have is, so as you try to make games, you'll find that there's some things you just don't know how to do. And so there are a lot of ways you can figure out how to do them. You can find someone else to do them for you, and you can do peer mentoring. You can teach other students how to do the things you know. You can have them teach you what they know, and so on. But there are a lot of other ways to build these skills, right? So obviously, one way to build skills, the most obvious way, is college classes. And so if you actually take some time to look through the course catalog at your school and all the prerequisites and all the requirements, it actually ends up looking an awful lot like a tech tree itself. And so, one thing you can do right now is just kind of look at all the required classes for your major. Just take some time, maybe not this weekend because you're going to be busy listening to all these awesome sessions, but maybe like next weekend. Just take a few hours and bring up your course catalog and look through the whole thing and find all the required classes for your major and all the requirements that you need to do in order to graduate. And look at all the classes you want to take that aren't required but that you still want to take. Maybe some things in your major, maybe some things outside your major, and figure out when all these classes are offered. Because sometimes classes are offered every term, sometimes they're offered only once a year, like only in the spring. Sometimes they're offered only once every 2 years. Maybe some of them have to be taken in sequence. So in order to take one thing, you have to take some other things first, and so it's this whole chain of classes that kind of gets fixed. So you can figure out right now like what classes you want to take and in what order. And that can really help you to plan ahead because then you avoid these situations where like you're stuck taking 3 really horrendous time sync classes all at the same time just because it's the only way for you to graduate on time, and you end up like practically killing yourself. Or getting some nasty surprise where you're like in your senior year and you go to your advisor and they're suddenly like, oh, by the way, you don't have enough credits to graduate. Or even just or even just something as simple as maybe there's a class that you'd really like to take and you just can't because there's no way to fit it in your schedule and you just missed that chance. So that's one thing you can do is just take your classes. Is just look through the course catalog, figure out what classes you want to take. So of course, there's a lot of stuff that you need to know that isn't part of classes. So part of it is just doing your classwork, but an awful lot of skill building is doing stuff outside of class. And one of the most frequent things you'll hear about is working on projects outside of class, which you really should be doing, and you should be doing it probably because you want to, because you like working on projects, you like developing games. Because if you don't, I mean, if you feel like it's just kind of a chore and you don't like the idea of actually putting in the work to make games, then maybe this isn't the career for you, and maybe you should be thinking about doing something else. But assuming that you like working on projects, the real challenge of working on projects outside of class then isn't whether to work on a project. It's that there's going to be too many different projects for you to work on. You probably have like 10 ideas in your head of games you'd like to make, and all your friends have 10 ideas that they'd like to make. And especially if you're at a school that actually has a formal game degree, you've probably got a whole bunch of, all of your classmates are working on all these different projects together, both in class and out of class, and there's so many different things you could do, right? So you have so many choices, and so how do you choose the ones that you can do? Because if you sign up for everything, then you're not going to have time to do it all, right? So really what you want to do is choose the projects carefully. Choose projects, and specifically choose projects that help you build the skills that you want. So If you say want to eventually be an AI programmer, then work on a game where where there's actually some real AI, some interesting AI challenges that you can take on and that you can contribute to the team. If you want to be a 3D animator, don't hook up with a team that's just doing a 2D game, right? So think about the kinds of projects that will help you build the skills that you want to build. Um, Another thing you can do to build skills is actually research. If there's a skill you don't know that you want to learn, but you don't know how to do it yet, there's Google, there are books, there are online forums, there are online communities. If you have any professors who come from the game industry who know these things, you could maybe go to their office hours where they're going to be probably bored and lonely anyway, and just ask them and so on. I mean, basically, just you should not let lack of knowledge or lack of knowing what to do be stopping you, because there's tons and tons of ways for you to do this. Um, so, as an example, say you want to design video games, but you don't know how to program. So there are lots of different ways for you to do that. You can find someone who does know how to program but doesn't know how to design games and work with them on a project. That's obvious. Or you could actually learn programming, which can take a lot of time and a lot of effort, but it'll also make you a better game designer. Or you could find a tool, and there's tons of them out there. The Game Maker and Game Salad and Stencil, and there's tons and tons and tons of of free or cheap tools that will let you make games that don't require a lot of hardcore heavy duty programming, and you could just find one of those and figure out how to do some things with it, and then use your game design skills to say, okay, well, I know how to do these specific things in this tool, and can I make a game that only uses those things? Um, or then maybe you say, oh well, I have this idea for a new mechanic that I want to do. I don't know how to do it. Um, so what can you do? Well, you can break it down into steps and say, well, these are specific things that I need to learn in order to be able to do this. And then you type those questions into Google. You say like, oh, what can um, and you wouldn't believe how many students I've had that don't even think to do that. They just assume that, if I don't know how to do something, then I just can't do it. There's an amazing number of questions I've gotten from students during my office hours that, if they just type the question into Google, they would get the right answer. So just go out there and research these things on your own, learn, through any means that you can find. Another thing you can do is go to conferences. You can go to places like GDC, like regional conferences, game developer meetups, and ask them questions about these things. Especially if you've got a specific problem that you're working on, you can probably find someone else who's run into that same problem and who can help you through it. You can also attend events like game jams. That's a great way to build your skills. I love game jams, of course. But probably for those of you who haven't been to a game jam before, this is an event where you basically make a complete game from scratch over a short period of time, usually one weekend. That sounds really scary, especially if you feel like you don't have all the skills you need. But I assure you, the best thing to do is just jump in. Don't be afraid. The worst thing that can happen is you spend a weekend building your skills and learning something. You would not believe the amount of stuff you can learn in a short period of time when when you have the incentive to like get stuff done. So I'm going to have a blank screen here for a little bit because I had trouble finding some good images for these things. But anyway, your career is like this epic adventure. It's exciting. You never know how it's going to go. You can make plans, and you should make plans. And just remember that everything you do is to plan for the future is like a die roll modifier. It's going to increase the chances that you're going to get the result that you want. But remember that there is still a die roll. There is still a random component in the world. right? So sometimes that's bad. Sometimes your studio closes and everyone's laid off, and you have to look for work again. Sometimes you go for a while before finding your next job. Very, very common uh, experience of students is you graduate at the end of your degree and you go out there looking for work in the game industry and you don't find anything for like 6 months, 8 months, a year. Very, very common, even for really talented students. That's just part of the process, and you just keep going. Keep applying, keep trying, and do what you can to keep food on your plate in the meantime. Um, so sometimes you get a job offer and you're really excited, and then like 5 days before you get hired, there's a hiring freeze, and all of a sudden you can't start work there anymore. Um, and then sometimes it goes the other way too. Sometimes you get an amazing job offer out of the blue. You have to decide if you're willing to sacrifice in order to take it. When I broke into the game industry, I got a job offer. It was completely unexpected, and it involved me and my wife moving across the country from Arizona to Massachusetts. Um, and that was a difficult thing to do, just out of the blue. Um, and the first time I got a job as a game designer, I was a mid-level programmer. I took a job as a junior game designer. This was a downgrade in pay. My pay got cut by about 40%. That was really hard. But it was also this awesome opportunity that I could actually design games, be a game designer. So it was a lot of it was deciding, is it worth it? Is it worth it to do these things? And sometimes you get these opportunities, and you have to decide, is this an opportunity I want? Is it? I've had colleagues in the industry that like got an amazing job offer that they weren't expecting, while they still had a job at a different game company, and they had to decide, do I leave my current company in order to take this really awesome opportunity, or do I, or do I stay where I am now? So there's a lot of questions, So there's a lot of randomness. So there's a lot of chaos in the system, and it doesn't mean you shouldn't plan, because your planning is basically makes it more likely that good things will happen, and more likely that you'll be prepared when bad things happen. But remember, there is still a random component to it. But the trick is, no matter what happens, still grow your skills, grow your character, because you still have these adventures, right? So maybe you end up being like this epic hero that goes out there and completes an epic quest and saves the world, right? I guess not, literally, but I mean, if your life were an RPG, you would be, this hero. Or maybe you just go out and you take one quest and you defeat this big dragon, and then you retire, and then you say, that's good enough for me. Or maybe you just fight your way through a big dungeon and find out that your princess is in another castle, and you do something else. Maybe you just set up in a town and become a shopkeeper and sell the epic loot that some other hero needs to go out and do an epic quest. But whatever you do, you still learn a lot about yourself, and you still learn a lot about your craft. You still explore the universe. You still help other people. You still solve interesting problems. So, go out there and take advantage of these sessions over the next couple days. Level up as much as you can while you're still in school. And I'll see you out there. So that ended up being a lot shorter than I thought it was going to be. So I will take your questions at this point. And I think Heather can just speak them to me. Ask me anything.
Hello? There we go.
Yes.
Thank you, Ian. We do have one question to get things started with. Remember
Okay.
that the Q&A can be found on the Watch Live page if you'd like to add a question here for Ian. Ian, the first question is, what would you recommend in order to survive as an indie in a region that has no game industry, like the Middle East?
Wow, Middle East, great question. Actually, you'd be surprised. It depends on where you are. I mean, I moved to Columbus, Ohio, which I didn't think had any game development in it at all. And after I moved here, I found out that we actually have a surprising number of small studios, and none of them were talking to each other. No one really knew anyone else existed. There was no unified game developer community or anything, but there were like all these people out there making games anyway. And just doing my work with Global Game Jam, I found that there's actually a lot of game development in the most unlikely places. We found, we have had sites in Turkey. We're next year is going to be, I think, our first site in Egypt. We've got a ton of game development going on in Israel. There's actually a lot of countries that you wouldn't think had any game development at all. And once someone says, "Hey guys, I'm starting a game jam," all of a sudden they find out there's all these other people out there that are doing this. One of the other wonderful things about especially being an indie studio is a lot of the things that you do really can have a global reach. I mean, you put something in the Apple App Store, pretty much anyone can get it, right? So or you make something available for download. You submit your game to the IGF, it gets judged no matter where it comes from. So it can definitely be lonely in a sense, and there are a few things you can do. I mean, you can reach out to other developers in other parts of the world. Things like Global Game Jam, things like the IGDA. So the I does stand for international. You can go to conferences either in your region or even just global ones. So there are a lot of ways to meet other people that even if they're not in your region, you can still stay in touch with them. I'd say probably about half of my Facebook friends are outside of my own country. And it's pretty wild. And it means that, and one of the cool things about that actually is it means that even if I'm up at like 3 in the morning, there's always people I know that are online. It's really wild. So there are things like that. It is a little bit lonelier, and it does mean that you have to do a little more work on your own to kind of figure things out. So for example, some countries might actually have like tax incentives or credits or any or grants or anything like that for people who start their own studios. Some do this for film, some do this for games, some do it for entertainment in general. But no one's going to tell you about that. You kind of have to go out there and research it and figure it out. Sometimes sometimes you'll just find out that there actually is you can look in schools around your area and say do any of these schools have game development programs. You can actually like run an event if you have access to physical space and and internet, and then you can pretty much run your own game jam either on your own or as part of Global Game Jam or some other event, and just put out there that you exist and see who else finds you. Maybe put up some flyers in local colleges and universities, and things like that. So there are a lot of things that could be done. There's also of course the chance of moving. I do know some people who have actually left their country and gone to somewhere else in order to take a job opportunity. So there's really lots and lots and lots of possibilities there. It kind of all depends on kind of where you go. I mean.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah.
We have another question here too. What would you recommend? What recommendations would you have for a pure computer science student to help break into the game industry?
For what type of computer science student?
A pure computer science student.
Oh, so, pure computer science, like only computer science and nothing else. Well, the good news is that a computer science degree does pretty much qualify you to to be a programmer. That's you ask most people who are game programmers in the industry what kind of education they had. Almost always it's either computer science or some of them did a specialized game programming degree. So that part is the good news, and definitely I would say if you want to become a game programmer, build your skills in programming. There's lots of different things you can specialize in with programming. First, obviously, learn the basics, learn how to program, learn the game programming specific stuff. The game specific stuff, if you're a pure computer science student, is probably stuff you'll have to learn on your own. It's the stuff that is specific to games. So things like timing. How can you have real time input and output so that you so that like stuff is happening on the screen even if the player is not actively typing something in. Most of the programming you do in computer science classes is event driven. Basically you wait for the user to do something and then you respond to it by doing something else, and it's just kind of this back and forth. And the idea of stuff going on in the background even when the player is doing nothing doesn't really exist in traditional computer science, unfortunately. So you have to figure out how to do that. And it's really not rocket science. It's just kind of figuring out in whatever language you're proficient in, how do you basically do a bunch of processing and just every now and then pull the input devices. Look at the keyboard and look at the mouse and say, hey, have you moved? Has a key been pressed? And if so, then I'll deal with it on this cycle. So you figure out how to do that. And again, a lot of that just comes down to either looking at books or typing into Google to figure this out. Other things that are specific to games are things like graphics, like how do you actually draw a pixel to the screen and not just text? How do you deal with sprite? And I would say for start off with 2D stuff. So figure out how to put a sprite to the screen. Again, you look up Google Sprite, Google Blit, BLIT. That's kind of how these things are done. Google 2D animation and just figure this out. It's different in every programming language, but it's not that hard. It basically involves treating graphics memory as a 2D array and basically doing a copy and paste from from a set of sprites that you load into memory and copying it to the place that is the screen. It's a little more complicated than that, but not too much. And things like how to actually get input from the mouse and the keyboard instead of just waiting for a text input. So it's things like that. So just think in terms of what kinds of games do I want to make, and like what very, very simple games would I like to program, and what is it that I don't know how to do? Like what are the specific mechanics, the specific things that I don't know how to do, and then you just figure out how to do them. And there are tons and tons of books on game programming. There are tons and tons of websites and resources, online forums, and everything. So there should really be no reason to stop, nothing that should stop you from being able to do those things. And that's actually the path that I had myself. So I can tell you it is possible. Yes.
Very
Another
good.
question?
Next, yep, we have plenty of questions actually.
Great.
Now, another question here is it more beneficial to get into the industry with a wide range of skills or a few honed specialized skills?
Yes. That's pretty much the answer. It all depends. It all depends on what you want to do. I mean, there is a benefit to being a jack of all trades. There is a benefit to being a master of a few very specific skills. It generally tends to depend on, in my experience, it depends a lot on the size of the company. For very, very small companies, you tend to have more work to do than there are people to go around, so people tend to wear lots of hats, which means being a generalist and being able to do lots of different things, even things outside of the area that you officially studied, can be really, really useful. In very large companies, it can actually work either way. You've got a large enough number of people on a big project that there's room for specialists that just do one thing and do it well. But there is also room for people that have a variety of skills who can kind of work between departments and be like that one person who's the glue, or the bridge between, say, programming and game design, or between art and programming, who can actually speak both languages. So that person can be really valuable on large teams too. For mid-sized teams, you usually see a lot more specialists and fewer generalists. So really, there's no bad answer. The question is, what is it that you want to do? And I've met some students that are like, I want to do game AI programming, and that's all I want to do. And it's like, great, learn a few other skills just in case you don't have that as a career option right away, and then transition into it as you can, by all means. But definitely learn that as your strength. I've met some other students who are like, I love design, I love programming, I love art, I can do all these things moderately well. What do I do as a career? And I say, well, be a producer. That's the one person that has to talk with all these people. But I don't know. I mean, it all depends. So really, a lot of it comes down to what do you want to do, and if you don't know what you want to do, that's fine too. Then the answer is you figure that out. I think the best way of figuring out what it is that you want to do is making games. Do game jams, work on your own game projects, try out a variety of roles, and see which of these roles feels like work and which ones feel like play. So.
Very good. Another question here. Game development seems to be a young person's game, no pun intended. After being a fairly successful software developer in the corporate world for the past 20 years, are you ever too old to jump into game dev as a career?
I have a story that has always stuck with me. It's a woman who turned 100 years old, and someone asked her, if you have any regrets, like if you could go back in time, like what would you change? And she said, if I'd known that I was going to live to be 100, I would have taken up the violin when I was 60 years old. I would have had 40 years experience by now. That always really stuck with me. It's really never too late. I mean, you figure, how old do you think you'll be when you die? Especially given the advances that we're seeing in medical care and in our understanding of how we age. I mean, living to be, if you're alive now, living to be 100 is not out of the question. Living to be 150 might even be possible in our lifetimes. That's an awful lot of time when you consider that all of the training for your career that was career specific, you may be squeezed into 4 or 5 years in college, and everything else that you learned was just kind of general. So I don't think it's ever really too late to make games. Or to transition. The question is, what will you have to do, and what will you have to give up in order to get there? So, if you're a successful software developer, you actually know an awful lot of the skills about game development, because game development is just a specialized form of software development. If you're sufficiently determined, you can teach yourself. You probably have the skills by now to teach yourself everything that you'd need to know, to develop games. And then the question is, what do you want to do with that? If you want to join the game industry and do it professionally, maybe that means setting your career back. Maybe it means taking a pay cut. Even if you're an established senior level software developer right now, maybe you'd have to go back to a mid-level or junior level developer and in order to get into the game industry. That's a little bit scary if you've got a mortgage and a family, and and you're really relying on that income. Or even if you transition from a senior software developer to a senior programmer in the game industry. Generally, game industry strategy salaries are a little bit less than salaries for doing exactly the same thing outside of the game industry. So you would probably still be taking a pay cut even if you kept all your skills and all your promotions and everything. Are you willing and are you able to do that? That's a big question, and that's a question only you can answer. But that doesn't mean that the path is closed to you. I think about the people that I most admire in the game industry, and the ones that I look up to and say, wow, those people are just, I want to be them, right? And with very few exceptions, almost all of them are 50, 60, 70 years old. And still making games. So this is not. So while it is true that there are an awful lot of young people in the industry, there are plenty of older folks out there too, and they need us because we actually remember, you know, what things were like before the industry was the way it is now. So there's a lot of value to having some experience. Um, that said, there are other options available to you too. If you look at the game industry and you say, you know what, maybe this isn't a career choice that I want for me. I just like to make games. Well, then, there's nothing stopping you from just figuring out how to make games on your own time, just as an independent, solo person. Just do it as a hobby project. I mean, some people, clear out the garage and build a car from scratch in there, or rebuild their engine or whatever. Some people just, on their weekends off, they make games just because they want to. And there's nothing that would stop you from doing that, just as a hobby. So there's, and then you keep your day job. So there are plenty of options that are open to you, and it's just a matter of figuring out what options are the most desirable to you. So.
And another question we have here. Do you have any recommendations for specific books or languages that would be helpful to focus on? I imagine this is a programming-oriented question.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. For books. Yeah. I mean, a lot depends on which subject. And I'm glad someone asked about books, so I can actually pimp the fact that I've written, co-authored a book. Actually, a couple of them. There's one called "Breaking into the Game Industry: Career Advice from Those Who Have Done It" by me and Brenda Brathwaite. So that one, is basically career advice for all disciplines. And so you can find it on Amazon. I think it's like, maybe 20, $25. And it's just basically the 100 most frequently asked questions we get about breaking in. As far as programming books specifically, a lot depends on exactly what it is that you want to learn and what it is you want to do. So it's personally, like, every time I've taught game programming, I've always hated the general game programming books because they're all pretty much the same, and they all kind of and most of them don't really concentrate a lot on the game-specific stuff, like I was talking about, like timing mechanisms, mouse and keyboard and alternative inputs and graphics and things like that. So, my advice is rather than me listing like specific books for specific topics, just say, I would say, number one, you can probably get 99% of the way there with Google, and not even worry about books if there's specific problems and specific questions that you want. If there's just a more general thing like, I want to do game programming but I don't know where to start, just use Google and use the word tutorial. And you'll probably find that there's a lot of stuff that's already written out there that you can just go through on your own pace and try and go through that. As far as books go, I would say, check out from your local library first, because that's free, and there's a ton of books out there, and you could be spending lots and lots of money on things that you never read or they're just never useful to you, because there are plenty of bad books out there too. So just take a look at them first. Go to a bookstore and just browse through the section and read through the things, and spend an afternoon or several afternoons there just looking through these things and taking notes, before deciding if you want to actually buy anything. Yeah. Okay.
All right, one last
One
quick
last question.
Last one. You mentioned the benefit of graduate degrees when lecturing in game development. Do you see them as beneficial to industry beyond academia?
A lot. It's a great question. A lot depends on your goals and what you want to do and why you are considering a graduate degree. Graduate degrees are kind of a double-edged sword in industry. So a lot depends on kind of your motivations for doing it and what you do while you're there. So, for example, to be really cynical, there are some people out there that, at least the industry perception would be, there are some people that get a graduate degree because they can't cut it in industry with a bachelor's degree. They get their bachelor's degree, they go out and look for work, and their skills are not strong enough. And so rather than accepting defeat, they just go and hide out and grad for another 4 or 5 years. that, like I said, really, really cynical view. That so you want to be so you want to be careful not to project that image, that grad school just means that you're actually weaker. That said, what are your motivations? If your motivation is, for example, just to learn more about game development, ask yourself, why graduate school as opposed to going out there and making games? Take the money that I would have spent on tuition and use that money to fund my own development, and just practice and practice and practice some more and get better at it. Now, that said, if there's a certain question that you want to explore in expanding the knowledge and understanding of games and game development and how games are made and things like that, then grad school may be a wonderful option for you to explore those things. If there's a particular topic that you just want to really super specialize in, it's a lot easier to do that. For example, in programming, there might be a specific thing like any number of topics like game AI, like network security, like any kinds of things that just are totally up. These things are that you might actually become a real expert in something that's directly relevant to games, and you can explore that on your own in grad school by working on this really in-depth project. That's something that could be very valuable to some companies. So a lot
Um,
depends. And
Unfortunately, we're out of
we're out of
time,
time.
but
Okay.
I want to thank you very much, Ian, and thank you all for joining us. We have some wonderful sessions coming up next. Just go ahead and check the Watch Live page, and thank you for joining us. Thank you, Ian.
All right. Thanks.